Super good. Okay,
Yeah,
team, let's get it. Let's get it going. We've got some friends
yeah,
who are
Sundar's
coming.
here.
Hey, Sundar, nice to meet you. Thanks
Hey,
for joining.
hey Zach. Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thanks for inviting.
Cool. So what we're going to do is the first bit is all about us telling everyone about what's going on with us, and then the second bit's more interesting. So we'll go through it. We have a little bit of hopefully a little bit of demo action today. Brian, are you geared up, or are you just going to talk? We'll
I'm
see.
geared up.
I
Yep,
don't want to
I'm geared up.
overpromise, but I think a
Yeah.
little demo would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me put it in slideshow mode so everyone can see a little bigger. Good. Okay, welcome. So a couple logistics, like usual, we have some things coming up, mainly Wednesdays in the middle of the month. We're going to do this kind of thing. For November, it's actually kind of exciting and important for us because we set that as a launch date. So we're going to share with you a little bit more about what's included in that, but we'll actually be inviting people to come and check out and use what we've been building. So that feels really exciting to us. Also, a little stressful, as it were. And then we'll close out the year hopefully with um, a little bit of that, but also a little bit of fun. So if you see down below, if you're in New York City, we will have a party. We'd love for you to join us. That'll be lots of fun. Okay. So for today, we're going to go through some updates, give you a little bit of a demo, like Brian mentioned he's ready to do, and then check in on our roadmap and what's kind of happening for this launch that we're doing in November, and what's kind of happening after that. Okay. Then we'll spend some time getting into it. So Manish is gonna lead a little discussion. We had a great time last month, so why not do it again and sort of see all the problems that are cropping up and how people are solving them, especially around IAM this time. So we'll dig into that. Okay, so pretty quickly here, we got a lot of updates going on that you may or may not want to know about. But like the first one is we're going to kill some Slack action. I'm not sure if you all feel the same way, but community Slack is just kind of boring these days, and Discord seems to be the way to go. So we're going to get rid of our community Slack. I think Kaylee, you said next week, the 15th.
Yep, October 15th.
Cool. We'll redirect that over to Discord. You are welcome to join us there. It is currently getting more fun every day, as you can see by the screenshot there. Link will be in this presentation. We'll put it in Slack if you want to join us. Please do. We did a bunch of work this past couple weeks on our website, but mainly our docs. So our docs kind of integrating that into our website better. Next up, and I'm looking at you, is a whole bunch of content updates. So stay tuned on that. But it does look a lot better and feel a lot better. And that's surprisingly hard to do. So thanks to the team for doing it. And then one thing that might be useful is all this content, like links to recordings, link to previous meetings, and also upcoming agendas and whatever. It's all on the website too. So if you need to find it, it will be there. It will be less hard to discover. We're going to do a bunch of updates to our enhancements repo in GitHub. So that's been our place to track all upcoming features. There's currently just an enormous amount in there. We're going to be doing some cleanup over the next week to kind of organize it around, some of our bigger boulders and epics related to features. So that's going to get cleaned up and have a bunch of sub issues that might give some of you a little bit more clarity into how to follow things. So check back maybe in a week or so. Either way, we'll see you for the next meeting if you don't take a walk by before then. And then the last thing is alt clouds. We've been pounding it on alt clouds. There's so many new clouds. It's like every day you like run into a new of them. And so we're considering, we have some like decisions to make. And if any of you all have opinions and want to get involved, please just ping me. But the alt cloud list is getting a little unruly because there are so many. And so there's some considerations there, especially around like what I would call almost clouds or adjacent clouds, like people who like have stuff, but then you have to run it. There's some really cool stuff there. We want to not confuse things. So we're going to probably create a new category and start tracking, cloud adjacent clouds, which we hope they become clouds, but some of them, maybe not. And then we have an alt cloud meetup happening in New York City. October is going to be fun. November is going to be cool. And then we'll do it again in February, March, April, May of next year. So if you're in town, check it out. Okay, cool. Brian, it's you. So welcome to Brian.
Oh,
Just let me give you a little intro for why Brian and why CloudValid. So we got to know Brian over the last, I'd say, year and a half, year. Yeah.
mhm.
when we first met, and Brian can tell you all about what's cool about the problems he's been solving with CloudValid. But we got so interested in it, we said, "Why don't you come over and hang out with Datum?" And mainly, for how we help service providers and new clouds do, fairly simple thing, which is onboard customers and users into their world, especially when they need to do things on their behalf with DNS, like, hey, validate that you own this domain. Pretty simple, but also, as anyone here who's not a DNS expert can empathize with, also fairly complicated. Not something you do every day. So CloudValid sort of solves that problem, and I'll let Brian kind of show it to you so you don't have to hear me talk about it. Yeah, Brian, you want to take over for a minute?
Yeah. Yeah, quick background on myself. I technical product manager, and I mostly got my start with email platforms, and I kept running into the same problem, which was in order to sort of onboard users and their domains to products, we were giving users this really tedious task of updating DNS records, which took them way too long and was really error prone. And the support team was not a ton of help either. And so I wondered, well, why isn't this automated? And so that was sort of the insight for and the impetus for CloudValid was, can we build something maybe akin to like maybe what Plaid does for payments? Could we do something similar like that for DNS? And so I'll do a quick demo. Should I share my screen?
Sure, go for it. Yeah.
Brian, as you get into that, can you talk a little bit about Domain Connect and that ecosystem?
Yeah. It would be nice if there was like an open source way to do this. And there kind of is. There was a project that a couple engineers, one from GoDaddy, put together a couple years ago called Domain Connect. And it was basically this way for a DNS provider, maybe it's GoDaddy or Cloudflare or Namecheap or something like that, they could implement this system so that users could be presented simply with sort of like an authentication mechanism and then a bundle of DNS records. And then if they authenticated, this protocol would automate the setup of these records in their zone. Domain Connect, I think, has a lot of promise. It's mostly supported just by, right now, GoDaddy, Cloudflare, and Ionos, and six total, but those are the big three. I think the hope here is that Domain Connect can be rolled out, or something similar to Domain Connect can be rolled out to every DNS provider. I mean, there are probably hundreds of them. And if only 3 of them are supported right now, it's not a ton of adoption. It's just a very tedious task for users to be presented with, especially if they're non-technical. And it's a lot of frustration that could be removed.
And this is some comments I'll add on to here because I've personally experienced this. I mean, a lot of people who are providing DNS services are hosting companies or site builders or places where you kind of get started, but there's thousands of them. And many of them have built these things pre an API economy. And so they've got little control plans. You've been in it. I bet people here probably have both domains registered and DNS hosted in a lot of different places, even if you didn't mean that to happen that way. And so getting a standard adopted by a whole bunch of kind of long tail is one of the challenges, right? To make this really useful. So if you go to use a service, which Brian, we're going to show you, and you put in www.mycoolbrandnewdomain.net, you would actually be able to, wherever that DNS is hosted would actually support the standard. So there's some real community work that we feel is needed and what attracted to some of the solutions that Brian's come up with. So I'll keep interrupting you, Brian, but go.
No, I think that's really good. Like the kind of integration you have to do right now with DNS providers, it's all over the place. Could be Domain Connect, could be a handshake agreement, could be some creative browser automation that you do sort of unofficially. And so standardizing on one thing would be the dream. And then a bunch of service providers, anyone from vibe coding platforms or website builders, or if you want to run your e-commerce website with Shopify or any number of SaaS provider typically. They could automate their onboarding with a high degree of coverage and basically reduce their support costs and eliminate any sort of churn that happens with user difficulty, just getting it wrong or them getting frustrated and leaving. So I'll stop talking. This is just the Datum application right here, and I'm gonna onboard my domain. In this case, I'm gonna onboard a subdomain of here's this, and this allows Datum to set up an HTTP proxy. Right now, there's many things that we want to be able to do with this, but right now it'll be enabling this HTTP proxy. And so the standard way of doing this in really any application is here's some DNS records. It's a very manual process. Look up hopefully you know who your DNS provider is, and you can go there and log in. But this could take.
Usually you forget, and you first go to where you registered the domain, and then you got to go find who your actual DNS provider is.
And I have to reset my password and 6 other steps in there too.
And so a more automated flow would look like this, where we can look up your provider, in this case, Cloudflare, and here's the same records, but you can be presented with really a click-through experience. So this is an integration with Cloudflare that lets you sort of confirm, do you want to make this change? And you can just click authorize, and as fast as propagation happens, typically a few seconds, sometimes a minute, there you go. This subdomain now is verified within Datum. Let's see if Datum actually catches it. Yeah, it is verified.
There you go. So
that's that. There's a lot of tedious stuff in the background that users shouldn't have to care about, and this just removes all of that. As far as the future of this, it's really reaching out to the community and seeing if they want to adopt something like Domain Connect even more, so that we have a broad degree of coverage. So there's a nice interconnection between applications and domains. And there are also a bunch of related things, like what about domain registration, or what about SSL certs that you want to set up? Can we do a lot of this stuff automatically without the user really having to touch anything or copy paste?
100%. Very cool, Brian. I mean, I think the community aspect's really interesting here, and some of the work we've done on Hickory DNS, presenting kind of a more modern interface to an authoritative DNS server that maybe can be rolled out with zone transfer to people who are running legacy bind or related that don't want to build an API in front of this and don't want to support some of these things, could be powerful. The key use cases that we've been finding with people are, number one, hey, I want to validate my domain because I need to use it over in this application or service, and I need to verify that you own it. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So we can issue SSL certificates, right? Another one would be, I want to make new records. For example, complicated SPF, text, MX records, a whole bunch of things, and I don't want to get them wrong. That would be another example to adjust, add, edit records. And, the third is this like constant, like new automated CNAMing and related, where people are maybe creating a subdomain, an area, of a site, an actual build, et cetera, that needs to have, records be updated towards making that experience really magical. I think the interesting part, and we're going to probably touch on this later, is like, this is number one, trying to create a way that a human, Kaylee's trying to get a marketing tool set up so that way she can update people about our newsletter and has to go ask somebody to go add these 9 records, to something, is really kind of error prone and pain in the butt. And I think the pain in the butt is real, but the errors are actually happen all the time. So we're trying to, number one, help fix that. And part of what we're working on within Datum is giving good granular permissions. Oh, does Kaylee have the right to use this domain? Like, can she make this request? This would be a good example of that. But then just take it one step further. I'm really interested in the follow on to this conversation is, well, what happens when an MCP server is asking it or an agent is asking? These are like critical to the security of how people use apps is DNS. And so we really want to figure out, hey, what are the areas that people are thinking about for this with agents or more autonomous work. And how does that work for private DNS, internal use, service discovery, the zero trust world, et cetera? So there's a lot of implications past this. First step is kind of building the community out, trying to figure out where the opportunities lie to work with these kind of hundreds or thousands of DNS operators and make this experience, where we can move together as an industry. So if any of you are curious about that or have experience in the DNS world, or just hate the problem and have a use case, we'd reach out to Brian, and we're pretty interested in moving that community forward.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Brian, I don't know if you're still sharing. If you are, you can stop. If you aren't, thank you.
I'll stop.
Appreciate that. So we're back to, this is a good kind of tie-in about what we're working on. And I just went and quickly highlighted a few things that might be worth chatting about, but just so you can see, I put together a quick table about things that we're working to launch in mid-November as a service. There will be a little bit of a wait list so we can practice getting good at it, but there's pretty basic stuff here that you can hear Zach talking about, like DNS, gotta have it, proxy. It's not super magical, but we want it to be both easy to use and really nail what we think are some of the new user experiences. So you can kind of see down here, I've highlighted what we call our Datum MCP, which is nothing that you haven't heard anywhere else, and our Datum Huddle, which is like, the two sides of our world right now is sort of a cloud native Kubernetes platform engineer, who lives in that world, and a sort of an AI native builder, someone who's coming at it kind of from the top down in a different way. And so we're trying to nail those two experiences, but elevate some of these kind of traditional foundations with, as Tom, you say, accoutrements, and I've borrowed it and made it my own. Some of the things that just make it scalable, right? So audit logs and sort of permission control, and over time fine-grained permissions to make it truly robust and then automatable. Could I just ask either Brett or Zach to kind of lean in and talk a little bit about why we have domains up here? It's kind of in the same bucket as what Brian was just previewing for us. So maybe just give a couple minutes on that.
Yeah, it's kind of my pet peeve. So can I?
Oh, dude, no, you can't. Of course you can't. Go for it.
Yeah. Jacob's gonna mute me with his administrator controls. Yeah, one of the things that you're going to see show up in Datum really here shortly, hopefully, is super useful, even if you don't use anything else from Datum, which is a manager to list all of your domains, no matter where you've registered them, where you're hosting the DNS, and what you're doing with them. We found this as a constant problem. I've tried many times to kind of consolidate to a specific registrar or consolidate to a specific DNS provider, and usually failed, and ended up with multiple places to track domains. And these usually cross, like sometimes I've been successful doing this within, say, a platform engineering team, and then marketing goes and registers more, or brand protection is doing some other ones. And before you know it, you've got spreadsheets of lists of domains. So this is an area of opportunity that we think needs to be turned into a platform capability. So this is actually pretty dumb. It's a list, but we're going to add some useful tools to it. You get all kind of like RBAC and permissions around this that we think are really important. So kind of stored in our standard data model. So these were kind of like resources that get to show up, regardless of if you've registered them in one registrar or another, or DNS is hosted maybe with us or somebody else. And then number two, we're going to give you some, basic features around verification. Where is the DNS? Who is the registrar? What are the current records? When was the last time they changed? Some basic stuff so that you, as a platform engineering leader, or maybe even just accessing this through some other interface, can really have confidence of your domain portfolio. We're doing some work with some of our investors right now, and one of their questions was, please list all of your IP assets, including all of your domains. And then I had to go kind of like get them from 4 different places. And I don't even do anything with those domains. So we're pretty excited about this. It leads into kind of the next realm of then activating more services, and making sure that operators have a consistent and item put in place for all of these things.
All right, cool.
So, if anybody has a spreadsheet they want to kill, that has to do with domains.
The
Let me know.
multi-decade journey of killing spreadsheets.
Yeah. Text files.
Why don't we just ask Brett? You spent like the last couple of days hanging out on WAF. Can you tell what this is and what this isn't, so people understand what we're talking about with one-click WAF and workflows in general?
Yeah, there's really a vast majority of customers that are out there these days are looking for a simple implementation here. So we're taking a basic rule set, giving a small amount of adjustability to it, and really making it so you can turn on a WAF very quickly on your proxy and very easily. We'll have an observe mode so you can see what traffic it would block. We'll send that information out to Grafana for you so you can make some decisions about how it's performing for you. And then a turn on a defend mode where it will protect your site applications, APIs. And it should be a very easy to execute process and provide a nice layer of security.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, so we've created a section in our application we're calling workflows. It's a fancy name for a simple thing right now. We're focusing on getting this experience right. So first of all, these can be expanded and built out, and community can build more of them. We're focused right now on like, hey, being able to export all of your great telemetry to. Right now, you can do that in Datum to Grafana Cloud, but it requires some steps. So we're going to make it as easy as we can, working with the Grafana team. Strangely enough, that hasn't, like, they're just kind of working with other providers on that too. So we're going to try to catch them where they're at. And then, we imagine a lot of different workflows being applied to different resources in our system. So that's why we've kind of carved it out. We want to practice that and see what we can do, first of all, with our own technology and things that we're managing, and over time, what people want to create and integrate with other things. Okay, we've got like an up next column. Like, that's just to show you where we're already working and heading. There's a bunch of stuff. It's like mainly around the connections. That's where the hard work is to kind of, okay, great, you can kind of meet the internet where it's at. Now, what do you want to do with that traffic? So that's what that bucket's all about. That's pretty well in flight. And those kind of like things are all in the spirit of us as a cloud provider, Datum Cloud. But what we're really interested in for, going into next year and where we're hoping to apply this is, how do we do this specifically to support new and existing cloud providers, right? How do we arm them? It's great that you all can manage your domains through Datum Cloud. That's super useful. We hope you love it. We also want to make those resources available to providers who are doing it at huge scale, hyper growth with, the Lovable team or whatever. We want our capabilities that we're building here to be especially applicable to them. So we're working on things like dedicated namespaces and essentially your own private networks, and, really being able to arm providers with their underlay when it comes to, internet networking, and also a lot of the tools around it. Like, it's kind of hard to go and integrate and build all these things on your own, especially if you don't have the expertise internally to do it, which is what we're finding. A lot of people have a lot of expertise up the stack, and they're focused up there. And so we'd like to be able to help them with some of the things down below. Cool. All right, any questions or just like things before we move into our discussion? I'd be happy to just pause here for a second and see if I could answer things for clarity. Or yeah, anyone on the team want to highlight something they're loving? I got to work into the convo here.
Oh, the up next stuff, if anybody's interested, the reverse tunnel work is going to be pretty fun, especially once we start helping with some things around internal DNS and certificate things. But if you're working, if you use ngrok, if you're using some kind of tunnel, if you're a developer that needs to connect a webhook back to something, would love to chat with you around this. We're going to be working with the IRO team on their protocol to enable that, and so we're in feature collection mode right now.
We're going to have Brendan come and explain IPv7 to everyone, though.
Yeah, it's a new term. We're coming up with it. It doesn't exist yet.
The future is bright. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, all right, Manish, can you take over from here and help introduce us, and I'll do the slideys?
Sure thing. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about agents a little bit. So I thought this is a good time to get deeper into IAM for agents and the overall security picture for AI in this AI age. So to that end, we have Vrajesh, who is CEO at Operant.ai, an AI security company focused on securing AI infra and apps with observability, detection, and defense. Vrajesh previously built core technologies for iOS and macOS, including dynamic tracing, data protection, and secure enclave at Apple. And we have Sundar, who is the CEO of Agntid.ai, a very young stealth mode startup. And Sundar is going to talk about IAM and for agents. Sundar's previous company, Scan.ai, was acquired by Fortinet, and he was VP and GM of the DevSecOps. So guys, welcome. And thanks for joining, Brajesh and Sundar.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
so
Manish.
well, you're welcome, and it's great to have you here. And since we've been talking a little bit about agents, of course, a lot of things change for agents when it comes to, we've been talking about DNS as well. So a little segue into that is discovery of agents, and agents' identity, trust, all of that comes into the picture. And of course, beyond that, you have security, not just for agents, but as this agentic world evolves. So would love to get your thoughts on, first of all, the identity and access management for agents, and along the lines of, identity, what are the changes? What are the evolutions? What's the state of the art? What needs to change, right? Sundar, perhaps you can kick us off in that area.
Yeah, sure, Manish. So Manish, just to set the format, I mean, do you want this to be a free-flowing panel discussion or more like a presentation where I present something? What do you prefer?
Sure, either way. I mean, I'm good with either. We talked about a panel
We'd love to do
discussion.
both. I'd love to hear
We don't mind
what
strong
both of you guys are
opinions.
working on.
Yeah, Sundar, if you got a strong opinions and viewpoints, we're happy to hear them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can probably maybe introduce the company a little bit, right? Just to kind of like give you a little bit of context, and then I can, so yeah, it can set up for a little bit more discussion. So let me just share my screen. Yeah, able to see my screen?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
We see
It's
the
a different one, old one, Fortinet.
Yeah.
Not agent. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just take about 5 minutes to kind of, just to introduce the company and what we do, and, then we can sort of, branch out from there. Yeah, the company is called Agntid.ai. It's just very literal. I like naming companies very literally. It's basically an IAM plus for AI agent builders. So if you're building AI agents, that's whom we serve for. Think of it as scope runtime identity for AI agents, but also the permissions enforced at the Kubernetes level. So as Manish said, this is a brand new company, just about 4 months old, just raised about $500,000 in angel funding. We're going to open another another SPV, probably at a 10 million cap. If somebody's interested, you can contact me, right? Sundar at Agntid.ai. But we're already getting oversubscribed there. The problem, right? I think specifically with respect to agents and identity, right? So one thing we know that the orchestration is exploding. You have MCP, everybody's putting their MCP servers, and but there's really no access control. Nothing really governs what agents can or cannot do. And the third point, which actually takes people some time to internalize, is that agents have agency, by their very definition. Even when we go to customers, they're like, hey, you know what? We've been using APIs to talk to like our third party. Whether it's, I mean, in the MCP world, they're called tools, right? So the third-party tools, whether it's Salesforce or like GitHub or what have you, right? And we always give broad access to these APIs. So and also, as of now, all of these AI agents are kind of just using these APIs behind the scenes. So what's the big deal, right? The big deal is that APIs are very deterministic. It's code. You know exactly what it's going to do. So a little bit of broad permission is not a bad thing, but for agents, the whole point of using agents is that they can plan, they can reason, they can take steps. Sometimes they call API 1, sometimes they call API 2, right? So you don't want to give them broad access, right? Like, there were a couple of examples already floating on LinkedIn. There was one autonomous agent, which went and deleted like an entire database or data set, right? So things can happen, things can go off the rails. And now, like, people say, okay, why can't we, do it with like whatever IAM that we have, right? So I'll give you like a very simple example. Let's say the prompt is, summarize my last 2 Google Docs. Again, this is a very simple prompt, right? Now, in the current methodology, what people would do is that, so again, there'll be an agent, which looks at this prompt and, does the summarization. For that agent, they will basically create like a service account. They'll go to their IAM or Google, right? They'll create a service account, which probably has like a very broad access, probably to the entire Google Drive, right? And they will give it. Again, the problem is that the access is too much, and it's also a long-lived access, right? Now, there's a sort of like a middle approach, where people say, hey, it's just one person's, Google account, Google Docs, right? So you don't need access to the entire Google Drive. So let's just, do an OAuth with whoever is logging in, right? Like, we'll through the chat, we'll get an OAuth permission, and we can do that, right? Again, still, it's a little bit better, it doesn't have access to the entire Google Drive, but it's the full user's drive. I mean, he might have like 100 documents, and the agent has access to all the 100 documents. It can go and delete stuff and so on, right? And it's also, I mean, the token is a little bit better. It's session based, but it's still medium, right? So what we are aiming for is, what I call just for task access, right? Essentially, the idea is that, hey, the agent just needs to see the last 2 Google Docs. So we will only give read permissions, not even write permissions, right, to the last 2 Google Docs. And also the lifetime is, just when you're doing the task, like whatever couple of, whatever microseconds or whatever you're doing the task, that's how much, access that you would need, right? So it's a very ephemeral access. So that's what we are aiming for. So, that's where we come in, we issue and enforce, what I call just for task identity at runtime. And it's sort of like a 3-step process. The first thing is, we understand the context, right? So we understand what the agent is trying to do. Again, in the example that I gave, right, summarize last 2 Google Docs, right, which would convert into like read doc 1 and read doc 2, right? But again, it could be very complicated. You can put an entire like book in a prompt. So, this can get really complicated very soon. But the whole point is our policy engine is kind of, intelligent enough to like convert that context into policy. We use our own LLM behind the scenes and various other techniques to kind of like make sure that this conversion is is as good as it can be. And the third part is enforcement, right? So we enforce it at 2 layers. Our primary enforcement is kind of at the Kubernetes layer, where the agent actually makes a call out to the tool. But we also have like an SDK path, which is like what we call the dev path, right? And that's kind of goes to my kind of like the next slide, right? I mean, again, there's 2 ways you can enforce, right? So you can do it the SDK layer, right? And in which case, you go after developers, right? The advantage of that is, let's say if I create a LangGraph agent ID SDK, right? So I can get a lot of context from LangGraph about what the agents are doing and all that stuff, which will obviously make my policy engine much better, right? But the trade-off is that there's really no central control. A lot of customers, that we are dealing with, they have multiple development teams. One team is using LangGraph, one team is using ADK, right? So there's really no kind of central control. So that's why we are kind of like falling back on the Kubernetes kind of like control, right? Which again is owned by the IAM platform team. So that's whom we are making our primary customers. So they like the fact that it's centralized governance. So it's one place where they have a view of like all the apps and how they can control all the agents across all the apps, right? And the only problem is that you don't have the full context, right? Because you're not really embedded in the agent framework. But the way MCP is improving, the MCP is actually putting all the agent information in the protocol itself. So if you open up the MCP, you'll have like agent prompt, agent task intent, all the lineage, all the communications back and forth. I mean, that's pretty much, what MCP does, like compared to REST. I mean, REST is stateless. MCP adds all the agent state, back and forth, right? So you can actually get a lot of information from MCP itself. So, we think as MCP improves, we don't really have to be in the SDK layer. We can basically be in the Kubernetes layer, right? So that's kind of, where we are. Most of the other solutions in the market, they are kind of on the developer SDK layer, but we are trending more towards the Kubernetes layer, right?
So, Sundar, quick question here on the MCP. So you mentioned that, it's improving. How well is it going, or the evolution going for task-based, execution rather than tool-based, right? So has there been any evolution in that, or proposed standards, or, in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of MCP is to put everything about the agent, right? As I said, like, I mean, ultimately behind the scenes, they are just REST protocols. These are just stateless protocols, right?
Right.
All that MCP does is, like, every call back and forth, they basically put the entire history of what happened in that call back and forth, right? So that's what they're aiming at.
That's where it is at. Okay.
Yeah. So even as of now, you like, even when one agent talks to another agent, right, you do get that information. Hey, agent one is talking to another agent. This is all the information that agent one had. This is the prompt. This is the output. These are the resources. These are the tools, right? And the same thing, right? So you do get quite a bunch of information. But I mean, to your
But you have to build it, right? You still have to build that whole context.
We have to. I mean, we obviously, it's
Okay,
more like
got
a raw kind of information, right? To your point, hey, is this information task based, or is this information kind of like prompt based? I mean, right now MCP is just dumping all the information as it can. And basically it's people, products like us, that has to build exactly what we need. Again, we are just focused on, like, hey, what does this task need, right? How do we and again, in some sense, like, every agent that's working is somewhat task-based. Let's say one agent is calling agent two, right? And and there's a multi-agent architecture. There is an initial prompt that drives this whole agent. So that prompt, in some sense, it's like the super high-level task, right? And agent, the initial master agent, splits it into multi-tasks and so on, right? I mean, everything is somewhat task-based, in the agent world. And that's why, like, also assigning permissions, also aligning them with tasks, that's a much better way to do it, right? So in some sense, we are going away from, like, this, RBAC. We had RBAC, ABAC, attribute access control, reback, right? Now we are kind of going to, some people call it TBAC, right? I mean, I just call it just for task access now. I just don't want to add, like,
got it. Yeah, let's not add more acronyms.
I know.
I think there's a question on chat about how does this compare to other Auth-Z work? This is Zach's question. So Zach, do you want to frame it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of get this, like, central versus, embedded control thing. I guess the question is, I've watched a lot of organizations just to even attempt, I think I'm looking at Drew and some others, even attempt to rebuild and support fine-grained authorization as part of just standard API work, right? Like, and that's been a huge struggle. It's like doing open heart surgery on organizations, like rebuilding all of your apps basically to do this. And I guess I'm curious, number one, how is this journey working for people? Are they just going to skip this? Let's rebuild all of our applications to have fine-grained access controls and move into some kind of newer, thing. That's one. And the second one is really around, like, this concept of like, okay, so this is an agent. Well, who's it doing it on behalf of? Like, because right now we have, like, very loose controls. I think in most either SaaS platforms, you have, like, groups called, like, admin, collaborator, or user, and at, like, enterprises with directories, you have something like part of the sales org. But now sales orgs can access, like, agents that need to do code, like, that are going to talk to, like, whatever. Like how are the, like, what needs to evolve related in just identity? I guess would be my other question. So those are two maybe different ones, but
those are very good questions. Like, so I guess I'll take your first question, right? So you're right. I mean, like, I would say, like, 4 or 5 years back, there was this bunch of companies, that came into this, what they call FGA space, right? Fine-grained access space. There's a bunch of companies there, right? Actually, one of the company called Assordo, they actually just shut down, kind of like highlighting, some of the problems that you just mentioned. It's just something that the industry, even though it's a great technology, right? The industry doesn't seem to adopt it, right? And this is the problem. Actually,
You have to
I
like
was talking.
get adopted right when you're building a new platform. I'm experiencing this right now based upon how much investment we've put in authorization. Otherwise,
No.
it's impossible to go and redo that thankless work,
Exactly, yeah. So I guess it's so when I look into something like Asserto, right? Like what they did was they said, hey, their entire messaging was, hey, IAM systems, old IAM systems, only provide like very static, kind of like coarse, like RBAC roles. Now the applications need like a lot of fine-grained roles, right? So what they did was we will let the application owners, which is the developers, right, define what all fine-grained, access that any part of the application needs, right? The whole definition and the whole enforcement sort of happens in the application layer, right? Which is fine. But what happened was, if you take a typical organization, the way that people see it is that moves away the control from the IAM team, right, to kind of like the application team, right? Again, like some of the customers that I'm dealing with, right, there's like a centralized IAM team and there's like multiple development teams. The IAM teams still want to maintain some control of like what access is going where. So they want to be that person because they are called IAM team. So they don't want to delegate that control to kind of like apps, right, where it's kind of like a black box within apps, right? So that was kind of like the fundamental, I would say, flaw, in some of those platforms, which came earlier, which said like, hey, we will support, fine-grained authorizations, right? But the problem is that they just took the control out of the IAM team and they made it like a black box, within the application team, right? So that's, again, I was actually having the very same conversation with, with one of the investors of Asserto, right, which is, heavyweight. So yeah, they kind of exactly said that was the tension that they're facing, right? So you're absolutely right. I mean, people don't want to they've invested a lot in their IAM systems. IAM systems are complicated as is. And they have like a whole. It's not just IAM. There's an IGA, there's an IDDR, there's a whole kind of like systems that are codependent on those, right? So you can't just like rip and replace any of those systems. I think that's where they went wrong, right? And by the way, we're not trying to do that. We are think of us as like if we're still dependent on the IAM, right? We don't issue our own tokens. We still get our tokens, from the IAM system. You're extremely dependent on the IAM systems. All that we do is that we are kind of like augmenting them, right? Just for the agent. So every customer that we go to, we say, hey, use your Okta, use your Entra. Think of us as like, an addition, to whatever you guys have, but very specifically for agents. But we also do the enforcement, which is something that IAMs don't do, right? Now, the second question was about, I think it was about, let me try to paraphrase it. It's about
word
like
control, like who is this agent doing what on behalf of, right?
Yeah. So I think at the high level, right, I see two kinds of agents, right? There are some agents, that run on behalf of a user, right, which I call agents impersonating human. This happens, typically in like active live chat scenarios, right? I mean, you're talking live to a customer service agent. The customer service agent, wants to take all your access. It wants to, figure out. So that's one scenario, right? Essentially, I mean, so again, there are some products, which serve that scenario. But again, even in that scenario, I think that agent is getting more access than what it needs. Again, like in the Google Docs example, right? I mean, let's say you are talking to like a whatever ChatGPT agent. You just say summarize my last two Google Docs, right? Again, you don't want to. Typically, what happens in that flow is, the Google Docs OAuth, comes up. You give access, right? The agent basically impersonates you. The agent has exactly all the access that you have, right? Which is great for solving the problem, but then it again also gives the agent too much access. Again, it can access like all the 100 docs, that you have, right? So that's something, so that's one use case, right? But I don't think, and more and more enterprises are not using that use case. They are more of these agents typically in the enterprises are kind of, running at the back end level. Like think of them as like cron job, right? Some sort of back end job. So they have some level of, service level account, right? So let's say in this example, you would call that a summarization agent, right? And then you will say, okay, what does summarization agent, needs access to? Maybe it needs access to some Google Drive, it needs access to, some other Salesforce or whatever it is, right? So that's kind of, you will have like some service level account access. That's what people do without using our product, right? And what we are doing is that we are saying even that service level account is too much. right? You want to control that only to what the task is at hand, right? So that's kind of what we are doing. But again, to kind of answer your point, a lot of agents. So I think enterprises are moving away from this kind of like agents impersonating a human one-on-one to agents, just think agents like doing a task, right? And the human ID becomes like one of the parameters of the context, right? Hey, by the way, you are doing this task, for this particular, user ID, right? Like, so maybe you can use that user ID in fetching the Google Docs, but they're not exactly impersonating that person. So that's the way in which it's trending right now.
So yeah, at this point, I think we'd love to, from you brought up MCP, so maybe Vrajesh can talk about, what are the the observability layer and what about all the transactions happening on MCP and what are the actions and that one can take, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is obviously a very interesting discussion, and we can, spend a whole day on all these topics because everyone is interested.
We'd love to have you for the whole day.
I think no, I mean this idea of what are these agents doing in real time? What kind of systems they are talking to? Obviously, there is an angle of identity, and there are some pieces of this where there is like, okay, what are things running inside your Kubernetes clusters? But as you will actually see in enterprises, they are all over the place. These agents, they are all over. They are not just limited to Kubernetes. They are not just limited to like, okay, one or two of my cloud services. It's like I'm running agents on Salesforce or Oracle, or like I have my Databricks cloud with like all these different things running on top. My salesperson is running agents on their laptop through ChatGPT, MCP connectors and whatnot. And so like the true expansion of how the MCPs and new APIs is kind of like going all over the place. And so, to the earlier discussion around like, how do you even map out the identities and usage is like just like one tiny sliver of like what enterprises worry about. And often they just want to leverage the work that has already been done on their IAM side and like what the cloud providers are offering. And, obviously there is a lot of the like just-in-time kind of stuff that is going on. But like once these activities are crossing different boundaries, they're talking to different services, you kind of need a way to map out what are the risks that are moving into these systems. And, we have been doing a lot of work around this whole area of not just observing, but doing detections in real time. And Operant is famous for the 3D platform, which where we bring the defense as part of this environment as well. So what we do is the 3D tech allows for discovery, detection, and defenses in real time and runtime. And what we are seeing is the entire attack vector with MCP has just like completely exploded. And with this kind of pattern, right, that everyone is using agents in all these different ways. I think I strongly believe now that like, okay, whether agents are powered by LLMs, SLMs, whatever Gen AI model you want to pick, the fact that a lot of enterprises have moved towards agents is not going to move back, right? Like all the previous work that we have done in getting here, it's just going to continue moving forward. And so in order to get the analysis of like what kind of usage, what kind of users are calling, what kind of MCP servers, and what kind of tools behind that.
Right.
And there is a whole new world of governance that is opening up for like, what do you do with all this MCP access that is out there? And it's really complicated, especially with the layers that are behind these MCP servers and what kind of tools that are coming up behind these servers. And to this point of like, how do you make sure the right authorization tokens are going all the way deep and setting up the right segmentation? And sometimes you obviously can't go rip out the old apps, but you need these other systems to help maintain or manage or mitigate unwanted access, unauthorized access, all the good stuff there. So we are seeing a lot of movement in this space. Obviously, everyone started with like, okay, thousands of MCP servers, we're just going to build one more. But now that enterprises are kind of seriously looking at this and like actually seeing the adoption, whether they like it or not, there is a need for new level of protection that is just going to kind of reshape like what layer we kind of understand. There's all these interactions happening in the world of AI.
Right. So on a follow-up, like you mentioned at the beginning, at the outset of that, these deployments are not just Kubernetes, you're deploying everywhere, right? So you need to have a footprint pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
And MCP Gateway I saw on your website is your new product. So is that like is everybody connecting to that gateway and on every platform, on every cloud platform, or
And like,
is that
is
how
that
you see it?
also how like internet traffic off of people's laptops and stuff,
Yeah.
like Zscaler style, route everything through here and then we'll figure it out? Or
Yeah. So actually, MCP Gateway is super versatile. We only have a few minutes. I don't want to get into slides right now. But what we did with MCP Gateway is we have built like a highly distributed architecture to actually be able to reach all these different environments and platforms, and even all the way to the laptop if you really want to. So some of our customers deploy MCP Gateway that all works within their premises. I think that has been like one of the big adoption points for Operant, where we have taken the elements of security, privacy, performance, kind of deep in the product architecture. So we don't need to see all the things that your enterprise is up to. I'm happy to pull up a slide here. Hang on.
Yeah, I got you.
Uh,
here.
Oh, no, I want to see
If you
his
don't mind.
slide. I don't want to see
Okay,
his
go ahead.
website. Come on.
All right. I
He's
thought I
got
would.
the slides.
It's got the moves.
Here we go.
you were saying something that I think is super interesting, which is like you don't need to see all of the traffic.
That's right.
I'm kind of curious how.
Okay, that's also a good point. So let me just start here for a minute. So what we are saying here, right? Like, oh, can I share? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So like, I think we all kind of have some version of this, right? Where
Right.
like you have all these different MCP tools that are hidden behind these MCP servers. That are, you might be having different MCP clients that are calling all these MCP servers. And this is where all the over permissioning, tool poisoning, context poisoning, lots of risky stuff going on. And that's where, like, when you have lots of clients and servers, like, obviously you want to figure out, like, okay, how are you going to protect all of these? And in what we are seeing to this point earlier, like, you can't just like call it like, okay, I'm just gonna go protect your Kubernetes environment and call it a day when customers are deploying deep inside Azure or Salesforce, or all their developers are using Claude or Cursor, and they are connecting to all these highly sensitive systems themselves. So a lot of CISOs, when we talk to them, they are like, okay, I've been blocking access to MCP for all this time, but now I cannot be a blocker anymore. I need to help enable the business. There is all these productivity gains, and my developers are like banging on the doors with like, well, how are we supposed to use all these tools that everyone else has an advantage on? So that's where MCP Gateway comes in the mix, and kind of what we were talking about earlier. We actually go across all these different environments. So we have Operant MCP Gateway that runs on endpoints as well as can support cloud environments. Both these use cases have very unique patterns behind them, and there are a lot of deployment models and architecture we can get into later. But with the endpoint side of it, you can actually cover the usage for the cursors and the copilots. Even like the latest ChatGPT has MCP baked in. So your HR or finance teams might have ChatGPT deployed on their laptops, and they are just interacting with ChatGPT with these thousands of MCP servers that are just coming from open source that, no one had any governance baked into that. And so before these, operations teams can go off and use the MCP servers, security and IT teams need to make sure that all that access is actually governed. They are approving the kind of MCP servers and the kind of tools that these teams can go access. Because once you share some data with all these, it's kind of gone forever, practically. And this goes across both sides, right? The endpoint has like different usage patterns, but the cloud side is where, as we were saying, like, yes, Kubernetes is definitely one deployment area, but we are seeing this happen across many different, data clouds or cloud services like Agent Core, as well as like all the different AI frameworks, agent frameworks that we know. And so those usage patterns are kind of all over the place with enterprises, but having a way to bring in the control back with what are the kind of clients that can talk to my servers, or what are the servers that I'm going to allow my clients to talk to. There's all this like producer consumer problems that are kind of coming up in this environment. So I'm going to pause here. I know we are kind of at time, but hope you get some preview on that.
I mean, this smells like, not to like call on Manish, but this sounds like zero trust times like a million. Because like this kind of zero trust was like a few known apps going to a few known clouds, plus like people doing web browsing, accessing things. And now it's like the surface area just got incredibly more complex, right?
Yeah, it's like an exponential more connections in this graph, right? Like,
I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, we have gone from, over the last couple of decades, we've gone from the OS level work to like L3, L4 layer work.
Right.
And now we are like beyond L7 at this point. Like these kinds of interactions that are happening, the need for enforcing trust at that layer, like now we are like what, L8, L9?
Yeah,
I don't know.
so that's why, that's why we were like, we're connecting. That's where, for Datum, for us, it's very important to build from the ground up, as you would have seen from our earlier presentations on where we're at. But getting to that point, connecting, all these service, discovering, connecting, observing is key to us, I think. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I'm also like very curious just culturally, right? Because I kind of understand in the cloud world and infrastructure, if you go back 30 years, IT was like you had to buy through the CFO. You weren't getting access to technology unless a PO happened. And open source and then later cloud really democratized the heck out of it and moved the CIO and related into a reactionary role in many cases, right? So product and software could move faster because you could just download Linux and download MySQL and do something yourself. You didn't ask for a license for Oracle in a Sun Microsystems box. And I'm just kind of curious, like, because what I heard you say there sounded like to me an attempt of the CIO being like, no, these must be the approved models and these must be the approved tools, which feels to me almost like a losing battle. Like, I know that there's policies around that in enterprises, but do people really obey them? Usually they go out and then like do it anyways at the sake of innovation and then get their hand slapped and then figure it out later. But it feel like it's too late. Before it was like, oh yeah, we'll find the SaaS app that you were logging into your Google account and then we'll like go put it behind our thing. But now it feels like that could happen so fast in such a destructive way. Is it really going to work?
Yeah, so actually what we are seeing is because of all the other work around doing things in real time and kind of expanding into like discovery in real time makes all of this possible, where it's not just like, oh, I'm going to get stuck in some ticketing queue for a couple of weeks. It's actually very, very real time that you can discover that, hey, this developer added this server. They can just like ask for approval. That can be like either that's part of some set that they have already like pre-approved and you are like added in that bucket for like, okay, fine. Your team has been allowed to use these servers. So we're just like kind of dynamically just add you in that whole flow. So there is a lot more real-time nature to how this discovery and kind of governance
And that's
can
not
happen now.
through a super weird, crappy ServiceNow, queue, or like how's that happening in most organizations?
It varies. I think it varies. I don't think we have come across a ServiceNow queue, but it's a lot. There is a lot of programmatic kind of this. Like we offer a lot of the obviously real-time discoveries, and there is a lot more programmatic governance that is in place on both like the cloud side as well as the endpoint side.
Well, the thing that I'm wrestling with here, which is I don't understand, I'm just even going back to like, I want to use a SaaS tool, like onboarding and offboarding is
Yeah.
a pain in the butt right now. Even at little tiny Datum, we onboard 3 people a month, and like getting access to the right tool, number one, then getting access just to the right group or project in the right thing. At like even just Datum, we suffer the problem. Like, oh, you
Right.
got a Datum,
Yeah.
but added to that project, is
Yeah.
actually super bad. And I just can't imagine it happening at a higher velocity. I just don't even know how to solve that problem
That's true.
at
Yeah.
low velocity. And I wonder how it's being handled at a high velocity. So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think the SaaS side of it is definitely still a difficult problem to solve. I mean, what we are seeing is more on the adoption of internal tooling around like what kind of clients I'm using, what kind of MCP servers I'm calling, which is all like fairly streamlined through like one central point around the endpoint or around the cloud, right? But I agree, like on the SaaS side of things, that are like I wrestle with Google Suite with like, where the heck do I add this flag? And like, can you just make my life easier now? No.
there you go. All right. Well, I think we've ended here with the very logical conclusion of building an entirely new directory service. So
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where I posted some of those interesting projects that I saw online that are open source, where you have these directory services. So that's
we're going to
pretty.
call it even more active directory.
Super active, hyperactive, proactive.
Hyperactive.
Entra reinvented.
You forgot
So
AI powered.
of course, that's implicit. All right, team, we are over time. Thank you for that was great. We should do more of that and longer of that. I really love it. And Rajesh, we should see each other again soon. Thank you so much for coming, and Sundar for
Of course.
sharing.
Thanks.
And yeah, maybe we'll pick this up when we all can answer Zach's big question of the meaning of life, which is how to onboard new people and offboard them one day.
And their agents.
And their
And there
agents
is.
too. What can a little agent do?
All right, 007s. Get
See you
that.
later. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye all.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.